They weary me. They just weary me. The producer, Mr. Dick Crew, and oh, by the way, those of you who have sent in letters of concern, yes, he's much recovered. When we threw the woodpeckers on his wooden leg, we've replaced that now with a new aluminum one. It's much better. Mr. Crew says, can you tie this commentary in with the Academy Awards? I said, I got your tie-in right here, Mo. He wants me to talk about sci-fi and science fiction and the Academy Awards. Why bother? It's the same screed every year. Science fiction films make more money than any other genre of films, any other kind of films, but do you ever see them in the Academy Awards? No. They're always nominating something done by Merchant at Ivory, which would put, I don't know, Teflon to sleep. In any case, I don't want to talk about the Academy Awards. I don't watch the damn dumb things. What I want to talk about are sequels. Sequels are wearying me. That's why I'm doing this one on my back. I'm really tired of it. There have only been a couple of good sequels as far as I can tell. 1978, the remake of The Body Snatchers, directed by Philip Kaufman, was wonderful. It was beautifully written, and not by Kaufman, by a writer, not a director. And then, of course, there was the David Cronenberg version of The Fly, which was remade in, I guess it was '86. Those are wonderful. Of course, in 1986 was also the remake of Invaders from Mars, which, when it was originally made back in the '50s, was one of the great stupid movies of all time. I always liked the zipper down the back of the Martians as they ran away from you through the caves. And, of course, when they remade it, it was equally stupid. But that's beside the point. I was recently approached by a film company that wanted to remake Forbidden Planet. The great Forbidden Planet, the great MGM film. You know, Dr. Morbius, Walter Pidgeon, you know, Annie Francis, the tiger, the whole thing. And I said to them, why remake it? Why would you want to remake it? They said, well, we own the rights. I said, no, you don't understand. It was made properly the first time. Remaking Forbidden Planet is dopey. It was made properly the first time. What you want to do is you want to do the sequel. They said, a sequel? I said, yeah. Those incredible doorways that the Krell came through. What shape were the Krell? What happened to them? Do you mean to tell me that a race that could build those machines, that could create such a planet, those people just died? No. The mystery of what happened to the Krell would be a sensational sequel film. And in fact, everybody who was left alive at the end of Forbidden Planet, at that time, Jack Kelly was not dead, he recently died, still alive. You can have them for cameos. Anne Francis and all the rest of them, Earl Holliman, all of those people can reappear. And then you have the new people go in search of the secret of the Krell. They said, oh, how fascinating, how fascinating. They came and they talked to us endlessly. Never heard back from them. Now, I was having dinner with Ray Bradbury the other night, and Ray said, guess what I've been asked to be a consultant on? I said, what? He said, they're going to remake Forbidden Planet. And then he dropped his head into his hands, and he went like this and said, oh, my, oh, my. And that's what I say, too. There's so many great ideas out there, so many books that have never been touched. Why doesn't somebody pick up J.T. McIntosh's 1 in 300 and make that? Why doesn't somebody finally, with all the morphing techniques we now have, make Alfred Bester's The Demolished Man? Who the hell has the stupidity to want to remake Forbidden Planet? It wearies me. I faint. I go, oh. About, I guess about 15 years ago, I'm looking at a comic book, and I grew up on comic books, and I'm suddenly looking at an ad for, I guess it was a Red Ryder Daisy BB gun, Daisy's Red Ryder BB gun. And I looked at this, and all of a sudden I made this connection that here were all of these kids who were reading comic books all through their youth in which there were ads for guns, which made them sort of pre-members of the NRA. And I thought, this is probably not a good thing. So I called a woman who was then the president, she still is the president of DC Comics, Jeanette Kahn, and I suggested to Jeanette that she might want to drop these ads, that it was not a good thing. Well, these ads were bringing in an awful lot of money for DC Comics and for Marvel and all these other comic companies, but Jeanette Kahn was a responsible person, really, really bright, and she thought to herself, yes, he's right, this is not a good thing, and they killed the ads. They killed the ads. Away went gun ads. And Marvel followed soon after. Stan Lee went in and talked to the people at Marvel, and they said, we can do without this money. Let's go for ads with other products. And this, I thought, was a very responsible thing. Now, that's 15 years ago. But now we come to today. We come to today, and if you could just dolly in on this is the current issue of Night Thrasher Comics from Marvel. And if you will look at this ad, you will see the ad says, yes, that is a gun in our package, and we are happy to see you, which, of course, is a play on the old Mae West line, is that a gun in your pocket or are you just happy to see me? But look at the size of that gun in this double-page spread. Here is a video game with a gun in it. Can you dig it? It is a gun. We are going to give guns to children so that they'll be all ready when they go out into the streets to buy a real gun. People are talking about banning this stuff. They don't talk about banning real guns, so they want to ban this stuff. I find this really reprehensible, really ugly. I think the video game manufacturers, to whom I lectured about a year ago. I was the guest speaker at the Video Game Designers Conference, and they hated me. I told them that they were a bunch of violent mothers, and they didn't like that. In fact, it got me an editorial in, I don't know, Video Wazoo magazine, you know, the magazine of the industry. And they said that I was a Johnny-come-lately, and how dare I say such things, that they're not really violent, that the show, that the game that has the what's it called, Wolfenstein, with the Nazis in the underground chambers, and you kill them and you shoot them. All of this was good, healthy fun for kids. Now, all of a sudden, here comes the U.S. government, and it says, you got a violent industry there, and someone's going to have to rein you in. So quick like a bunny, they run and they put their own kind of rules out. We'll do this and we'll do that. You watch, we're going to be different. We're going to be better. We're going to be a lot better. On the day that I'm showing this to you, on the CBS News, I heard about a 7-year-old kid who had taken a gun to school and killed an 8-year-old kid. I wonder where he learned that. This week I want to talk to you about an absolutely wonderful television program that you'll probably never get to see.
Greetings, prisoners of gravity. This is Commander Rick.
It's produced in Canada on something called TV Ontario, and it's called Prisoners of Gravity. Now, many of you will say, oh, I know about Prisoners of Gravity because you've seen it on one or another PBS station over the last year or two. Prisoners of Gravity is an absolutely spectacular show that was started in 1989. In fact, they're just finishing their 5th year. And what happens on this show is that TV Ontario will be doing some sort of a nature show, which I think is called Second Nature. And all of a sudden you get, and they're static, and the next thing you know, the signal has been pirated. And it's been pirated by a guy who's up in the Reality One communications satellite up above the Earth, and it's Commander Rick. And this is a guy who got tired of reality and being a prisoner of gravity here on Earth, so he got into his 1967 Camaro with the homemade booster rocket strapped to the roof, and he just blasted off, and he was going to find, you know, the land of imagination. What happened was that he hit the satellite. And so there he is now, trapped on communication satellite Reality One with 4,000 channels of cable that he can usurp. And every week, he does a wonderful show about science fiction and comics. They've done shows on telepathy, homosexuality, racism, comic book layout, monsters, the retelling of the Frankenstein legend, zero population growth, an entire show on Ray Bradbury, an entire show on Neil Gaiman and the Sandman character, on world building, on families, on war in space. They don't just do interviews, although the interviews are amazing because they get people you've never seen. Douglas Adams, Nick Bantock, the guy who wrote Griffin and Sabine. You never see him in an interview. They've done everybody. They'll do a whole show on the Clarion Writers Workshop, and they'll interview 25 different people who have taught at Clarion. It's a wonderful, wonderful show, and unfortunately, we don't get it down here.
The first 8 issues of The Sandman are collected in the graphic novel Preludes and Nocturnes. They explain how a secret society of sorcerers attempt to imprison death.
I urge you, please, to help lobby for it. Let's get Sci-Fi Channel on the beam. Let's get them to get this show, Prisoners of Gravity, here, so that we can enjoy what our neighbors to the north are enjoying. Here we are, a direct lineal ancestor of mine. You'll notice the similarity in the teeth. You know, it's not my my habit to be troublemaking and question things, but I've just been that way ever since I was a kid. When I was very, very little in Painesville, Ohio, they sent in I guess it was a rabbinical student to teach us you know, studies, and here he was telling us about the Bible, and he started off with Adam and Eve and did that whole numbers. I raised my hand. I'm maybe 10 years old, and I raised my hand and I said, let me see if I have this right. There's only Adam and Eve, right? There was only them. They were created by God, and God made Adam and Eve. He said, that's right. And then from them they got Cain and Abel, right? That's right. And there was only the 4 of them. That's right. And so then Cain slew Abel and was driven out of Eden, east of Eden, into the land of Nod, right, where he got married and had children. I said, where'd all those people come from? So they threw me out of school. Now this was when I first began to question the efficacy and the imperturbability of deities. When I learned that Santa Claus actually worked for the CIA, I was heartbroken. I don't want any of your children to be watching this, but you know, of course, that the Easter Bunny is a cross-dresser, And as for the Tooth Fairy, rotten to the core. Now, I will attack at this point one of the great icons of American society. From the time you are born, you believe that Walt Disney and the Walt Disney Organization are the purveyors of absolute magic, the happiest kingdom of all. Well, I have to draw you up short. It finally has gotten to me. It annoyed me when it was Walt Disney's Pinocchio. No, it's not Walt Disney's Pinocchio. Pinocchio was written by an Italian gentleman named Carlo Collodi. Wonderful man. Bambi was not written by Walt Disney. It was written by someone named Felix Salten. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was not written by Walt Disney, although it's plastered all over it. It was written by a man named Jules Verne. And in fact, The Three Musketeers, which was a recent Disney film, was not done by Walt Disney. No, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, D'Artagnan, they were invented by Alexandre Dumas. When Dumas died, he had one of the largest funerals in the history of the world. But if we open this Marvel comic, we see that The Three Musketeers was written by somebody named Bobby J.G. Weiss, which must come as a great shock to Alexander, who was probably spinning like a gyroscope. Disney has been sticking its name on things for 50, 60 years, and they get away with it. They get away with it because nobody ever calls them on it. If they ever say that something was written by somebody else, it's a little itty-bitty line somewhere at the bottom of a film where you never notice it before. Now, I don't want to suggest that Disney is greedy. The Disney Corporation is certainly not greedy. The fact that last year Disney's made $3.7 billion, and that the profits were $622 million. The Disney organization can have the earth. They can own it. They can pave it over and put up all the small worlds they want. Although, if you ask me, just that theme from It's a Small World is enough to make you want to take out an Uzi and shoot them all dead. But they can have all the money in the world. All I ask is that from time to time they acknowledge that the people who wrote the things are the people who wrote the things, not Disney. I'm a crank. What do you want from me? Yo, take a look at this. You may never see something like this again. This is the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Science Fiction Writers of America. That's the professional organization of science fiction writers. SFWA was founded in 1965. It was founded by Damon Knight, the motivating influence, and its first vice president, that's me. You're looking at him. I resigned in 1977 from SFWA because I couldn't stand any more amateur arguments about what color the club tie should be. They began giving out the nebulas in 1965, but a few years later they started giving out the Lifetime Achievement Award. This Lifetime Achievement Award is the one that belonged to Alfred Bester. It's been entrusted to me, and I'll keep it till there's an Alfred Bester museum or something. The problem with it, giving it to Alfie, was, though he was a great, great writer, Demolished Man, The Star's My Destination, Alfie never lived to get it in his hands. They gave it to him on his deathbed. It was pushed through at the very last moment when he was just clinging to life. And that's what's happened too often to too many great writers in this field. Because there was a rule, a bylaw, a strange, weird rule that somebody put together and said you could only give out 6 Lifetime Achievement Awards every decade. 6 every decade. Why this rule came up, I don't know. I suppose somebody thought it would make the award seem much more valuable, much more mystical. After somebody's been writing for 30, 40, 50 years, it's going to make it more valuable. How about this man? How about Paul Anderson? Here's a man who's been writing since the late 40s, for God's sakes. Here's a man who has written 127 books, Paul Anderson. Paul Anderson is 68 years old. That's a fine piece of age, 68 years old. How about this? Bob Sheckley. Bob Sheckley, one of the most influential writers of the 50s and 60s, a great humorist, a terrific writer. He's a punk. He's only 66 years old. And what about Kate Wilhelm? She's also a punk, 66 years old. Kate Wilhelm, 3 dozen books, each one more brilliant than the last one. Kate Wilhelm, by the way, only one of the 12 people who's ever gotten the Lifetime Achievement Award was a woman. And now we come to the grand old master himself, A.E. Van Vogt, Alfred E. Van Vogt. In 1930s, in the 1940s, if there had been a Lifetime Achievement Award, A.E. Van Vogt would have gotten it before Asimov. He'd have gotten it before Clark. He'd have gotten it before Bradbury. A.E. Van Vogt was one of the most influential and important writers that we had. He wrote Slan. Slan remains today the best book about mutants you've ever read. This kid, Johnny Cross, trying to run away from the purges, and the world of null A. Van Vogt brought non-Aristotelian thinking into the genre. He used general semantics as an idea for a novel. The Voyage of the Space Beagle. A.E. Van Vogt was a writer whose work was seminal. He went away in the 50s. He got involved with Dianetics, and he wasn't around for 20 years, and he came back, and he was badly agented, and nobody seems to remember him now. And because he was away and because he was involved with Dianetics for a while, it seems as if no one wants to give him this award. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, that I've been trying for 2 years to get SFWA to give A.E. Van Vogt the award. And they say, well, Van should get it. Yes, of course, but Paul Anderson hasn't gotten it. Kate Wilhelm hasn't gotten it. Ursula Le Guin hasn't gotten it. What about Bob Sheckley? Yeah, I agree. Paul, Bob, Kate, they ought to have it. Ursula, she's in young, fine fettle. So's Silverberg, so are any number of other good writers. This rule, which I understand is no longer even in the bylaws, is something that has hung SFWA up, and it prevents them from doing the decent, humane thing. It's not just that A.E. Van Vogt is very old and very sick and may not be with us for an awful long time. It is that it is his due. He did the work. These people are of an advanced age. If you're going to say to them, we appreciate what you did, if you're going to say, we think that you are masters, now is the time to do it. You don't have 2, 3, 5 years to have a popularity contest. Let's give it to Paul this year. Let's give it to Kate next year. Let's give it to Van 4 years down the line. There isn't any time left. There's no time left to do this. I talk to you now, and I'm not making any friends for myself. In fact, I probably have lost for myself the friendship of the outgoing president of SFWA, Joe Haldeman, because I brought this up in a recent banquet and business meeting of SFWA up in Oregon. This was raised, and they couldn't talk about the rightness of doing it, of giving out these awards, of getting rid of the rule, or bending the rule, or putting the rule in abeyance, which you can do. Any rules that people make can be put aside. They're just words. No, they didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to talk about how I was blackmailing them. They wanted to talk about how I was coercing them. And I was warned, I was threatened. They told me, don't go on television with this. You'll only do more harm than good. How much harm more can I do? The awards are not being given. No one's talking about it. Nothing's being done. I'm not asking anybody to put any pressure on SFWA. I'm asking SFWA itself to have a heart. To have a heart and do the right thing. These are awards that are due. No one will argue with that. All that stands in the way are words. Change the words. A couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, at the Icon, it's a convention in New York at the State University of New York at Stony Brook, we did a midnight panel for the edification, predilection, and amusement of all and sundry, and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday as well. And it was on writers' horror stories, how writers had been stiffed and jerked around and robbed by various publishers, and the kinds of things that they did. And it was your usual gripe session, but it was done in an organized fashion. It was me and Barry Maltzberg and James Morrow and Dan Simmons and there was another writer or two, I can't remember. And it was not the first time we'd done it, but it's a big crowd pleaser. And we did an hour, hour and a half, and it was absolutely spectacular. I mean, Dan Simmons talked about how he had gotten virtually nothing from the writing of the 2 Hyperion books because of the cross-accounting that Bantam had done. And of course, you can't talk about it on camera because it would get Dan in trouble. But all of us talked about this, and it was a sensational panel. When we got all done, I said, did anybody tape that? Did anybody videotape it? Did anybody audio tape it? No. Convention committees are run by volunteers. They're run by, one might even say, obsessive fans who spend a lot of time and a lot of their personal money to bring off a convention. They do it because they like doing it. I've never understood it, but I do see that they work very hard. But when it's all done and all of these wonderful panels have been held, panels on fantasy and on science fiction, on horror, panels that talk about the state and the condition of the market and the world, philosophical panels and amusing panels, no record. No record anywhere. Maybe somebody has an audio tape, somebody sitting in the audience, maybe somebody has a videotape, but there is no archive. Now, I've been going to conventions since 1951. You know who I met in 1951? I met John W. Campbell, Jr. I met Edward E. Smith, Ph.D., Skylark Smith, old Doc Smith. I met Hugo Gernsback, and I heard them talk. I heard the most amazing things. Living history. That's what it was. And now, 30, 40 years later, whatever,
I look back and I say, I wish I had an archive of those recordings. I wish somebody had done all those things. Well, I'm talking directly to those of you who put on conventions, those of you out there who are obsessed by doing it. Before you put anything else in place, before you worry about your costume ball, before you worry about who's going to be your guards and how many tracks of programming you're going to have, would you, for God's sakes, kindly please get someone with a professional ability, not some of the jamooks you hire who cut off speeches in the middle. Get someone who will have perfect, good taping. Make it available at the conventions, on-site recording, and also make it available to an archive, which one of you out there will start. A spoken word archive of convention, panels, and speeches. History, living history of this genre. Would you do that? Oh, and by the way, before I go, I didn't want you to think I'd forgotten. The SFWA, on this master of extending the Grand Master Awards and giving it to Phil Farmer and Jack Vance and A.E. Van Vogt, you know, and Kate Wilhelm, they're still talking, folks. They're still talking. Can you hear them? They're still talking.
You know, one of the things that always gets my goat, somebody gets the Academy Award and they say, you know, they go up to accept and they say, save the whales, or they say, don't shoot Native Americans, it's bad, or it's not really good to give AK-47s to kids. And invariably, some bonehead will object to them having said it at the Oscars. They'll say it's the wrong venue, it's the wrong place, it's the wrong forum. What do you mean it's the wrong forum? 186 billion people are watching the Oscars? That's the wrong forum? No, that's the right forum. If you want someone to hear what you have to say, you pick the best venue. You don't go and get yourself a cigar box out on a street corner and shout at someone and hope that 3 people will hear you. But whenever they don't want to talk about what it is you're talking about, they attack where it was you said it, or the manner in which you said it, or your manner of delivery, or, gee, he's not a very good guy. That's called an ad hominem attack. I'm back, folks, and I'm back for the science fiction writers of America. They think the problem will go away if they don't talk about it. They think I'll go away if they don't talk about it. It ain't going away, and I'm not going away. Since we last got together, when I talked to you about that idiotic rule that SFWA has, in which they can only give out 6 Grand Master Awards in every 10 years, thereby ensuring that some of the greatest writers in the field will die before they ever get their due, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. A couple of people went on the computer nets. One of them said, if Ellison doesn't like what SFWA is doing, he should rejoin. No, I don't have to rejoin. I helped form the organization. I was the first vice president. I also do not approve of the Fourth Reich skinheads or the Ku Klux Klan, but I don't have to join them to point out that they're dips. SFWA is still sitting and talking. They're still jawing. They're discussing it. Yeah, they're discussing it. They've only been discussing it for 10 years. We're not talking here nuclear holocaust, folks. We're not talking here putting someone on the moon. What we're talking about is altering a rule, changing a rule, so that people can get the Grand Master Award who deserve it, people who are moving on in age and whose health is not good. I talked to you the last time about 4 of them. There's A.E. Van Vogt, who's 82 years old. There's Bob Sheckley and Kate Wilhelm, each of whom are 66 years old. And there's Poul Anderson, who's 68 years old. And I forgot to mention, by the way, and I don't want to let it slide, Jack Vance. Some of the most brilliant books ever written in the field, written by Jack Vance. Jack Vance is now 78 years old, and he hasn't gotten his Grand Master either. What I'm saying is change the rule. Change the rule. Get these people their awards now. Now, this position has many adherents in SFWA. There are an awful lot of letters that I've gotten, an awful lot of phone calls, and a lot of people in SFWA whose names, you know, they don't want their names to be known because they're afraid that someone will attack them the way they attack me, who are saying exactly the same thing. Get these people the awards now before they die, so that we don't have a, you know, Catherine Moore, who died at the age of 76, never having gotten a Grand Master, or Chad Oliver, who died last year at the age of 65, never got one, or Avram Davidson, who died at the age of 70, never got one. Folks, Jack Vance is 78. He should be added to A.E. Van Vogt and Kate Wilhelm and Poul Anderson and Robert Sheckley. And as long as we're at it, you know this guy? Philip Jose Farmer? Philip Jose Farmer wrote The Lovers. Philip Jose Farmer, who was voted a Hugo as the best new writer in, I don't know, 1953, I guess it was. Look at that. To Your Scattered Bodies Go. Phil Farmer is 76, folks. You want to deny him too? And Jack Vance? And Kate Wilhelm? and Paul Anderson and A.E. Van Vogt. Get off your ass, SFWA. Do something, and do it now. Stop talking. I, Mr. Luddite, retrograde, suggest to you that big conventions are counterproductive. Gigantic world cons, gigantic comic cons, they may be terrific for the sellers, for the companies that promote the comics and that promote the books, the big publishing houses. It may be terrific for them, but it's not good for us. You don't get to sit and talk to your friends unless you do it late at night. You wander around all day long, you never see anybody. It's really very difficult. I know a lot of you feel that way because a lot of you have told me this. Like, let's take, for instance, the recent WesterCon 47 that just took place just very, very recently. Now, there were 58 staff members of the con committee and 70 volunteers. And they started in 1991 to reserve the hotel. This convention cost $50,000, and it had 1,500 attendees. And the guesstimate is that after all is said and done and the bills are paid, there'll be $10,000 profit to be distributed among the staff, the program participants, and the volunteers for a 4-day convention. We're not talking here an intimate little thing. We're talking here big business. Let me recommend for you, don't move the camera. I've got them right here. Here are 3 interesting small conventions. There's a wonderful thing happening now of small conventions are forming. There's one called Potlatch. Can you see that? Potlatch. Now, Potlatch moves between, I believe it's between San Francisco and Seattle. One year it's in one place, the next year it's in the next. And this one is February 10 to 12, 1995. You might try Potlatch. It's a small convention, maybe 200 people, and you'll get to see a lot of people that you'd like to meet. Then there's something called the ReaderCon. See this, ReaderCon? The ReaderCon is a very, very small convention. It's kept purposely small. They've had as guests of honor Ursula Le Guin and Chip Delaney and people of that quality. And they do it because they want readers to meet writers. It's a very literate, it's a very sensible convention. This one, they're skipping 1995. This one is for 1996. July 12 to 14, 1996. And this one's in Worcester, Massachusetts. Or if you don't know how to pronounce it, Worcester, Massachusetts. Actually, Worcester, Massachusetts. And it's a great convention. I've never been there, but everybody I know who's gone to ReaderCon says it's a dynamite way to go. Small convention. See where I'm going with this? Small convention. And there's the MythCon. This is the MythCon. You cannot possibly read that because they have done it in an artsy, craftsy style. But this is the MythCon 26, I guess. And it is the 26th annual Mythopaic Conference. This one, again, is being held in Berkeley. And this one will be July 28 to 31, 1995. These are 3 small conventions. Let us fall back in time to conventions that were small, where you can sit and meet the people you want. You don't have to have a surplus of $50,000 when you're done. You don't have to. It's supposed to be for fun. It's supposed to be community, getting together with friends. Let's try and regain that. Now I'm done. Oh, by the way, SFWA on the Grand Master Awards, guess what? They're still talking. They're deliberating. They'll get back to us soon after the apocalypse.
Our resident commentator on the passing scene is award-winning author Harlan Ellison. When we call him award-winning, that's an understatement. Harlan has won more awards for his 62 books, more than 1,700 stories, articles, essays, and columns than any other living fantasist. His current books are Minefields, Mephisto and Onyx, and I, Robot Screenplay, based on concepts by Isaac Asimov.
Over the last year and a half, through my various commentaries, I've made some errors. I've thrown some points out to be reposted by you all, and this is the cleanup. The first one comes from Professor James Gunn, the well-known author and editor and anthologist, who said, by the way, in the re-showing of your piece about awards shown Sunday, you may already have learned that Hugo Gernsback came from Luxembourg. I made an error. I said that it was Switzerland. Jim Gunn, thank you very much. Hugo Gernsback indeed came from Luxembourg. Matt Bodkin asked my opinion on popular writers or artists' work being continued after their death by others. I don't think an awful lot of it. I don't think that we need anybody else writing other Sherlock Holmes stories. Conan Doyle did very well by himself. I don't really think we need other people writing Raymond Chandler imitations. I don't think there's much to that kind of thing. I think it's grave robbing. I think collaboration is one thing, as done by Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth, but I think using the creations of other writers or artists after they're gone is digging them up and standing them up for people to grin at. That takes care of that one. Now, many of you had heard that there was an organization of pusillanimous, pustulant creatures who had formed an organization called Enemies of Ellison. That is true. They could not take me on alone, so they ganged up. They have been getting a lot of bad play as a result of this. And one of the things that has happened is that a group called Friends of Ellison has been formed. And you need not pay any money at all, as opposed to this other group that charges you $19 for scurrilous remarks about me. And all you have to do is send them an anecdote about something decent and kind I've done, and they will send you this wonderful, handsome button. That takes care of that. Now, there were a couple of people who were objecting to my working on Babylon 5 because I had said that I wouldn't work on any show in which you heard the sound of spaceships zipping past or the sound of explosions in space, because that was bad science. Well, J. Michael Straczynski, Joe Straczynski, the producer, is a somewhat better scientist than I. He's not a very good one, but he's better than I. And so he appealed on the internet, those of you who have no lives and sit there all night long, punching around with the internet. And he got answers from all kinds of wonderful people, like Rick Tumlin and even Freeman Dyson, the inventor of the Dyson sphere. And they say such things as, sound is a term we use to ID a sensory report we gather through our tympanic system relating to a very narrow band of frequencies. Vibrations are gathered through the skin. Either way, it requires a medium, meaning like air, to be transmitted. I said, would you hear sound in space? The sound of a ship passing by would be silent at first. As the exhaust of the other ship begins to hit your ship, you would be very unlikely to hear any tones. That is, the hum of the other ship's engine would be lost due to the inability of the sparse gases of its exhaust to propagate sound. And it goes on. You would, however, hear wind. In fact, you would likely hear a faint sound of wind anytime you move. This was news to me. I thought space was silent. I thought there was nothing but bad science in these movies. Well, all of this was responses to Joe's request, would there be sound in space? And the last little piece that I wanted to read to you, because apparently you will be able to hear some things, and they have adjusted the sound on Babylon 5 accordingly to be scientifically accurate. Even a ship just passing by would create a disturbance in the plasma. If the ship was moving supersonically, which essentially means the same as it does in the atmosphere, although it's a little more complicated, it would also create a shock wave and a sonic boom. An ordinary microphone stuck out in space would pick up and translate a lot of these waves into sound. Now, that's Steve Smith from the High Altitude Observatory. So, I stand corrected. You would hear some sound in space, and I'm glad I'm working on Babylon 5, where there is a little sound in space. We have here on America Online any number of items that were sent along about my performance here, but there's somebody named, he calls himself the Mighty Mick. M-I-K, the Mighty Mick. I have no idea who this person is, but he calls me a Luddite because I have pointed out that there are a bunch of jamooks on the cybernet bulletin boards who sit around all night babbling at each other. And he says, it seems to be, who will drag Ellison kicking and screaming into the 21st century? Yo mama will drag me, Mr. Mick. That pretty much takes care of all of the things I had to take care of today. I've tugged my forelock about as much as I could. Send in your questions. I know the answer to everything except two things in the universe, as we all know. Been my pleasure talking to you. Do come again next week. Yes, here am I, a mere tool of commercial interests. The network has said to me, why don't you do a show in which you show us things that people should buy? Some of the toys that you're looking at and buying these days. And I'm saying this show provides me with very little graft, folks. I don't get any real high-ticket items. But I'll show you a few things that are worth spending your money on, because as that great American Ronald Reagan said, the business of America is business. Of course, he stole that from Calvin Coolidge, but who am I to cavil? Here is a wonderful thing that I'm actually not showing you because I told Jeff Killian that I wanted to show it on this show, and the next thing I knew it was being shown on SF Trader. You can buy it through SF Trader on this here network, but it is a reproduction of the original Day the Earth Stood Still poster. It is quite beautiful. These are published by a publishing company in New York called NBM. These are the Ray Bradbury Chronicles, and there are 6 volumes of them so far. And these are Bradbury stories adapted and illustrated by the best in the business. And let me show you the kind of thing that they are. For instance, here is an adaptation of Ray Bradbury's wonderful story, A Sound of Thunder.
they go for $19.95 in hardcover. They got numbered ones that are, you know, more expensive, but these are very, very nice. I urge you to get these. This is also done by NBM. They've only done 2 volumes of this so far. It's The Fairy Tales of Oscar Wilde, illustrated by the superb artist P. Craig Russell. And this is volume 1, this is volume 2. And let me show you a page out of this. This is a story called The Selfish Giant. Look at this. Ah, is this beautiful? These are only $15.95 a piece. That's NBM. Topps, that makes the trading cards, did a shadow set for the movie. Now, these are called uncut sheets. These are the cards on the sheets before they cut them up. So you can't get them this way, but you'll get the sheets themselves. Now, the set is 90 cards, and most of them, can you see this down here? Can you shoot that over there? Most of them are the movie scenes, which are okay. They're okay. But in between, they've got art. They've commissioned real art by various comic book artists of the shadow. It's beautiful stuff. And there's a full extra set of these, and these are the covers done by Jim Steranko for the shadow paperbacks that he did in the 80s. And on the backs of the cards, oh, you're going to love this. Look at this, look at this. Here's Steranko. Of course, this was Steranko when he was about 9 years old. He's my age now. And this is the woman who played Margot Lane on the radio. And this is the guy who created the Shadow, Walter Gibson. Well, he didn't actually create him, but he wrote the Shadow novels. And that's Brett Morrison, who played the Shadow on radio in the 1940s, and Orson Welles. And these are the backs of the cards. It's a very, very nice set. Oh, you're going to love this. This is the latest of the Neil Gaiman Sandman graphic novels. This one is called Brief Lives. These are the 2 Sandman sculptures. This one is available now, and you can buy it if you want. Very expensive. You'll have to hock your house. This one is a prototype of the one that's forthcoming. It'll be out around Christmas of this year, 1994, and it is based on the P. Craig Russell art from the Arabian Nights edition of the Sandman. This one I got, it's a prototype that was given to me by Neil at a banquet dinner that was done for me. Now, excuse me, would you come over here? Yes. Now, I'm going to go away now. I'm going to leave you here to look at these, and I'll see you next week with some more good things like these books here. Take care of yourself.